Attendant, thank you for joining us this evening. I hope you had a wonderful screening. Yes? Yeah. All right, let's get the fun started and bring out co-writer and director Andrew Ahn.
I forgot what this theater looked like, and I didn't realize we were high. Hi, everyone.
Hi, congratulations.
Thank you.
I just have to say, we are so exceedingly proud to see you evolve as a filmmaker through the early days of the labs at Spa Night, all the way through your movies to here. We're just so proud. Congratulations.
Thank you, thank you.
And I also want to say, I don't know about how you felt, but for me, The Wedding Banquet is such a bomb. I feel like in this particular time, it brings so much joy and so much love. Thank you for that. So let's get started. Tell us a little bit about, The Wedding Banquet is such canon, especially within Asian American cinema. Talk to us when you were first approached about the project and how you felt.
Yeah, I was really hesitant. Our producers had, an initial conversation, and I wasn't involved in that, in that moment. And I was hesitant because the original film, the Ang Lee film, holds a very special place in my heart. It's the first gay film that I ever saw, and the fact that it was a gay and Asian film, it's just incredibly meaningful, and I can't help but think that it put me on the right path as a person and as a filmmaker. And so it was, kind of a strange feeling, because it felt like an exciting opportunity, but I love the original so much. But I rewatched the original film in preparation for my meeting with our producer Anita Guo, and like all great art, it inspired art. It inspired all these feelings. Watching it, these emotions, these insights, these memories of conversations that I've had with my boyfriend. And I realized that so much has changed for the queer community since 1993. And one of those things is gay people can get married now. And so for me, this question became, well, do we want to? Should we? And then this question about children, one of the first conversations that I had with my boyfriend about kids, he told me, if it happens, it happens, which is a line in the movie. And I got really emotional. I was like, no, it doesn't, not for queer people. And I realized in that moment that, as queer people, because we can't whoopsie-daisy a baby, you have to be extremely intentional about having kids. And so any sort of hesitation could become a giant obstacle. And so kind of with these insights into modern queer family building, kind of rooted from the emotions that all came up from rewatching The Wedding Banquet, I felt like, maybe I do have my way into this.
Talk to us a little bit about breaking the story and developing the characters that ultimately we see on screen.
Yeah, it's kind of silly, but one of the first thoughts was, what if the bride in the original film, Wei Wei, what if she is also queer and has a lesbian partner? And then, I thought about, I want to talk about marriage, I want to talk about children, maybe I split it up into these two couples, and they're all friends. And then in this concept of parentage, there's nothing more kind of impactful to how you treat potential parenthood than how you were parented. And so I wanted to see this older generation. And so it just started to kind of click into place. The characters, I knew I wanted Min to be an artist because of the original film, and I knew that I wanted Chris to like basically be my boyfriend and have this like millennial indecision, the burden of choice, and like be such an incredible observer, but maybe a little slow to act. I wanted Lee to be extremely maternal, so in touch with her emotions, and then Angela, I wanted her to go on this journey to figuring out, I love my partner so much and I want so much for her, but like, what do I want, so that was the core, and then we just started to slowly flesh them out, and it's like they had different jobs at one point, and then James Seamus thought of this kind of theme of stewardship and nature, and Chris became a birder, and it was so funny when I saw that draft. I was like, a birder, is that gay? And then I was like, oh, so many of my gay friends are birders. And I was like, perfect, great, and then Angela being an environmental scientist and Lee being a social worker. There was just something about how this family, even if they aren't aware of it, are kind of preparing for the next generation, trying to make the world a better place. And so, it was a very organic process. And then, of course, with the casting, like, really came to life.
We'll get to casting in a minute, but you touched on James Seamus, who co-wrote this with you. Can you talk a little bit about what that process was like?
Yeah, I worked with James on Driveways. He was one of our producers, my second feature, and on this one, working with James as a co-writer was such a privilege. James has such an interesting perspective on the art form and on the industry because he was a studio head, he's a producer, he's a screenwriter, he's also a director. No one has that kind of global view the way that he does. As a screenwriter, it was so fun just to like talk story and character. And something that we realized very quickly was that there are just so many characters in this now, and in a weird way, we talked a lot about another Ang Lee film, Eat, Drink, Man, Woman, because of the size of that cast and kind of the plate spinning, and so there's a lot of engineering, and then there was also just like really fun discovery, James and I talked about Min's grandmother, and at first, it was maybe a more expected narrative where she's fooled for more of the movie, and then James was like, oh no, this woman's too smart, like we've written her too smart, like she knows, and we were like, what does that do to the narrative? And it was like, it makes it actually like so interesting, and we had so much fun, and it was a really collaborative process, but it took a long time. We started writing this in early 2019, and there was a pandemic, and like me going off to make Fire Island, and then a writer's strike and an actor's strike that like kind of got in the way. But I think we always just had so much passion for the story and felt like it was really meaningful, and that really motivated us.
Did you always have a sense of the tone that you wanted for the script, the balancing act? I mean, you talk about the balancing act of the characters, but also you do it so beautifully with both the heart, the humor, the drama. How was that in the writing process for you?
Yeah, like James and I talked about this a lot. We wanted to have this film feel spiky, like we didn't want to shave off the edges of the kind of dynamic range of the film, in an effort to have this feel, like super cohesive. It's like we actually wanted to kind of show like the messiness and, how like so much of what is funny is tragic, and so much of what's tragic is funny, and like I love that scene in the bathroom between Joan Chen and Kelly Marie Tran, where Joan says like, like maybe you'll be a terrible mom, maybe you'll be worse than me, which is so funny. But then it's also like, and then they say I love you, right? And it's just so sincere and heartfelt. And if we could achieve that, you know, within a scene, that you could laugh and you could cry, like we felt like we did something. And so it was, you know, it was difficult, and of course, you know, you work on that in the writing, but you work on that on set, and sometimes you play something, you know, a little bit more dramatically, a little bit more comedically, and then of course in the edit, you're really adjusting those things, and it really only comes together right at the very end. You know, it's a process-long, you know, kind of patient thing you have to do, and you know, I felt like we were starting to get close. My editor, Jérôme Bresson, he told me that the film was starting to work for him when he watched it and he felt like it was kind of like hanging out with me, and I like really liked that. And but then I will say that also makes me really anxious when I get like critique and feedback, because it feels like people are like judging me.
No judge, only love.